Last speaker is, he completed a master's at Stanford University in 1997, nowhere near Delft, but he's still an okay guy, I'm sure of it. Worked as a consultant for Bain Consulting, but he's still a swell guy, I'm sure of it. Then he founded Shazam, and you don't have to be a fan of DC Comics to know that that's how, you know, if you don't know what the song is, then you hold it up, and then you know who made the song, and somehow that's the thing. Now, he works as head of banking innovation for Virgin Money in London. Please give an inspirational round of applause for Dhiraj Mukherjee. Dhiraj. Here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I was invited to tell you a little bit about the early days of Shazam. And this is an old, old story. We're going back to times when, unfortunately, most of you were not even born. How did it start? Let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm from India, and I grew up all over the world. My father worked for Air India. And I ended up in the US for university, and I was in Silicon Valley at Stanford Business School just when the internet was starting up. And that gave me the entrepreneurial bug. That gave me the desire to become an entrepreneur. And I thought, yes, that's what I'd like to do. So for those of you out there in the audience who want to be entrepreneurs, and I think that's most of you, what do you need to do to start a business? Well, the first thing you need is an idea. Now, I didn't have an idea, but I had a drinking buddy called Chris Barton. So he wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. So we used to sit around and drink beers and try to come up with ideas. Now, Chris, for the record, since this is being filmed, is a great guy. Love the guy. But he had terrible ideas. And we had a great time. We got along super well. But we wasted a lot of time. But one other thing about Chris is that he didn't know anything about music. He was so bad, every time he heard a song, he had no idea what it was. And so he came up with this idea for Shazam, which was, what if you could use your mobile phone to identify any song which you heard? It could be on the radio, it could be in a club, in a bar, and that was his idea. So he mentioned this to me. I said, that's an interesting idea. There's a couple of problems. Where would we get the technology? And he said, oh, we'll invent it. Now, just to clarify, so he was a student at Berkeley Business School. There's no way he was going to invent the technology, right? I said, so how are we going to find all the music that we need to identify any song which is out there? He said, oh, we'll just ask the record companies. I'm sure we can figure this out. Now, I happened to be working for a record company at the time, and I knew they didn't have the music. So this was a non-starter. I said, so how are we going to make money from this business idea of yours? He said, oh, you know, every time somebody identifies a song, they'll buy a CD and we can make money. Now, this was in 1999, just when a business called Napster was huge. So anybody who wanted a song could just download it for free. So I was like, there's no business model in this at all. This is not a very good idea. But I wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I quit my job, became his business partner, and we launched into it. So Chris had a friend called Philippe. He's the guy at the end of the picture with the big smile and the T-shirt. And Chris said to me, now we've got a fantastic teammate. He is a workhorse. He is incredible. He is the equivalent of 10 people. Now, I'd never met Philippe. I just knew him as Chris's friend, but I trusted Chris. And we always had a good time together. So it was part of the adventure. It was part of the journey. And I remember I met Philippe many months later, and he was exactly as Chris had described, you know, superhuman. So we had an idea. We had a team, but we were missing some key bits. We needed the technology. So I had moved to London in 1999 to start up the UK office for the business I worked for at the time. Chris and Philippe were at Berkeley Business School. We didn't even know the domain of technology that we needed in order to develop this service. we found out that it was digital signal processing. And it just so happened that the centers of excellence for digital signal processing were Stanford and Berkeley. Just dumb luck. So Chris and Philippe went and spoke to the smartest people they could find in the heart of Silicon Valley to try to solve this problem and invent this technology. And the problem, if I can just describe it to you briefly, was the idea was you'd be able to hear any song, just about 15 seconds of music, over the microphone of a mobile which existed 17 years ago with all kinds of distortion, going over a mobile phone network which causes distortion, and be able to identify that song really quickly and give an answer to the user so that we could make money. And all the smartest engineers in Silicon Valley said, "You guys are nuts, get out." There was no way that we can do this. So they spoke to a professor who was the head of the Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics at Stanford University, Dr. Julius Smith. And they asked him a question. They said, "Who are the smartest PhD students you've seen at your time at Stanford?" And Dr. Julius Smith gave them a list. And number one on that list is Dr. Avery Wang, who's in the middle of that picture. Still with that big smile. Don't let it fool you, because he had a big challenge on his hands. And his challenge was he had to work with the three of us and try to come up with this technology which had never been done before. Now, I don't really understand how the technology works, nor will I ever. But suffice to say that we were up and running. So Chris and I were writing the business plan, getting ready to kick off the business, and Avery was under pressure. We told him, "You've got 3 months to come up with this so we can start fundraising." So he's in his basement working away, trying to invent this thing, but it's just not happening. He's almost about to give up. He was this close to giving up when he had this breakthrough about the time that it takes in a song, a constellation of matches, this line which comes through, and I can't explain it. But let me see if I can play a little clip which will give you a feel for it. Okay, so this is what the song sounds like. And this is the music sample he was working with. This is what it sounds like. Can you imagine? That's what he solved. He is a genius. And he with loads of patents to protect this technology. So the rest of us, Chris and Philippe and I, were like, this is it. We're ready to go. We have the technology. We have a demo. Let's go and raise some money. This was the summer of 2000, and we just went pitching to raise $1 million of seed funding in London from the best investors we could find, from people who understood mobile, understood music, really got technology, could work with the founding team. And we had the privilege of some extraordinary investors. So Dr. Brent Townsend, for instance, who invented the 56K modem, wrote us a check for $250,000. Still got a picture of it. Oh, that was a big day. So we got the money, got the team, got the technology. We were missing the music database. Now, the music database, as I had said right in the beginning, didn't exist. So what do? This is where Philippe came into his own. We did a deal with a distributor of music in the UK to be able to extract fingerprints of the songs which they had in their warehouse so that the Shazam algorithm, which Avery had developed, could actually work. We hired a US Marine called Bart who ran a team which worked 24/7 on custom-built machines extracting the fingerprints for this service. I look back now, and it was just a mad time. So you're thinking now, okay, so this is it, right? This is everything you need. All the elements are in place. Yes, but there's one thing which we didn't know about, we hadn't taken into account. And that was the market. So in 2001 was when the internet bubble burst. So the NASDAQ, which had gone right up to 5,000, came crashing back down. None of the VCs were investing. All the startups we knew were going bankrupt. And then you had September 11th, 2001. It took us 13 months to get to launch. And when we launched, the service was you dial a 4-digit number on your mobile, 2580. You held the phone up for 15 seconds. You get a text message with the name of the song and the artist. It just wasn't a great user experience. And we were sitting there burning cash. And there's only one outcome if you have a business like that, and that's bankruptcy. Because we had all the costs of keeping up with the music, all the fantastic engineers we had hired, all the infrastructure we had built. We were going bankrupt. There was only one thing we could do. We never wanted to give up. We never wanted to let that dream die. So we had to sell the technology that Avery had so painstakingly invented, so we could raise enough money from a company in the US to keep going. And they did monitoring of radio stations, and they let us continue the mobile identification service. This went on for years. We launched in 2002. In 2007, this man came up with the iPhone. In 2008 was when the App Store actually launched. And then Shazam became an app. So you could just hit a button, and it would identify that music, and it just made sense. And that's when things really changed for us. We had hit bottom. We would have been dead. And as the App Store launched, and Apple invested in letting the world know what apps are all about, Shazam was right up there. So within a year or two, we had millions of users. We were in the top 20 apps downloaded. And this is what the graph of our usage looked like. So it took 10 years to get to the first billion users of Shazam. The next billion took a year. The billion after that took 2 months. So I guess the message is, for all of you out there who are thinking about being entrepreneurs, work with people you like. Choose people you trust. Hire the very, very best people you can find. And enjoy the journey. It's a choice being an entrepreneur. It's a way of life. It's a huge thrill. So enjoy every moment of it. It'll all be good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dhiraj. Thank you. Whoa, what an event, don't you think?